Is being audio and video recorded. Motions shown are examples. They may be omitted or amended. Can we start with the Pledge of Allegiance? Please all rise.
Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, please. Roll call, please.
Mr. Albert? Mr. Case?
Here.
Dr. Kraft-Reese? Here. Charlotte
Recording
Crane?
in progress.
Bonnie DiTomaso?
Here.
Dr. Eberwein?
Here.
Mr. Emerson?
Here.
Mr. Farella?
Here.
Dr. Jelinas?
Here.
Mr. Locatell?
Here.
Ms. Ladazuri?
Here.
Ms. Lounsbury?
Here.
Mr. Stewart? Sarah Tucker?
Here.
Mr. Peters?
Here. Okay, we have a quorum. Response from the audience. Any audience? Hi, welcome. Thank you for coming. All right. First up, Student Affairs, Nice to see you.
I believe the last meeting was very recently, but a few things have happened for students. Yesterday was Wednesday Advising Day at Wahconah, so all the underclassmen got the guidance counselors came to English classes and spoke about electives for next year, and the kids are really interested. We had a fair that same day where during lunch they went out and saw like all the rope tech things, the music part, and everything at lunch, so they could get an idea like what things they want to do in addition to their core classes. That was really nice to see. I'm personally a senior, but like it was really cool to see like how they can spread out and see. We haven't had that in the past, so it was very nice. Thursday and Friday of I think next week. No, it's this week. The grade 9 and 10 have benchmarking, and last Friday the sophomore class of 2026 held a school dance to fund the prom for next year because the sophomores will become juniors, and that's who runs the prom. So that was successful as well. So that's all we have for student affairs this week, but I'll be back next time.
Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you.
All right. So, first up is the financial report.
Okay, so we have 3 warrants that have been previously approved.
All right. Gifts and donations and grants. Acceptance of the family's first grant.
Be it resolved that the Central Berkshire Regional School Committee accept the following grant award from Families First totaling $500 as recommended by the district treasurer.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion, questions? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Albert? Mr. Case?
Yes.
Dr. Kraft-Reese?
Yes.
Charlotte Crane?
Yes.
Bonnie DiTomaso?
Yes.
Dr. Eberwein?
Yes.
Mr. Emerson?
Yes.
Mr. Farella?
Yes.
Dr. Jelinas?
Yes.
Mr. Locatell?
Yes.
Ms. Ladazuri?
Yes.
Ms. Lounsbury?
Yes.
Mr. Stewart? Sarah Tucker?
Yes.
Mr. Peters?
Yes. Motion carries. Next up, the Secretary's report, approval of minutes of the regular meeting of January 25th, 2024.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any questions?
Sorry, I forgot to email you. In the safety and wellness report, Kelly Jean Gallagher is listed in the wrong name. Kelly Jean something. That was not the right last name.
Perfect.
Sorry for the last minute one.
No worries. Thank you for that.
So can we get a roll call vote on the minutes as amended? Roll call vote.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Dr. Kraft-Reese?
Yes.
Charlotte Crane?
Yes.
Bonnie DiTomaso?
Yes.
Dr. Eberwein?
Yes.
Mr. Emerson?
Yes.
Mr. Farella?
Yes.
Dr. Jelinas?
Yes.
Mr. Locatell?
Yes.
Ms. Ladazuri?
Yes.
Ms. Lounsbury?
Yes.
Sarah Tucker?
Yes.
Mr. Peters?
Yes. Motion carries. Moving on. Next up is the superintendent reports. You.
Okay, I have 2 things this evening. First, I have the numbers for you to make a recommendation toward which grade, if there would be any grades for this upcoming year, we would close. So at this point, what I would recommend is that we close only grades 7 and 8. Grade 7 right now has 125 students. Grade 8 right now has 124 students, so we really have, with school choice requests, so in grade 7, we have 4 school choice requests, in grade 8, we have 2 school choice requests. So that really brings us up to a fairly high number.
So this is next year's 7th and 8th grade?
Yes,
Okay, current 6th and 7th?
Yes.
Yes.
absolutely. So this year, I recommend all grades at the high school stay open. The grade 6 is open. Last year, we did have to close grade 6. All the elementary grades are open. One thing I do want to say about the elementary grades is we keep them open, even if if a grade is full at one of the elementary schools. As long as we have an opening in a grade at one of the 3 elementary schools, we keep them open.
Any questions? All right. Next up.
Do we make a,
Do we need to
I
vote
think
on it?
yeah, we need a motion and we need to make a motion. There's a
To close
there is a
grade.
motion. Yeah,
There's a motion on the agenda.
there is a motion.
Yes, please.
Okay. Okay, this is school choice openings for 2024-2025 school year. Be it resolved that the Central Berkshire Regional School Committee approves the openings for school choice for 2024-2025 school year.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any questions or discussion further? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Dr. Kraft-Reese?
Yes.
Charlotte Crane?
Yes.
Misty Tomaso?
Yes.
Dr. Eberwein? Dr. Eberwein?
Sorry, yes.
Mr. Emerson?
Yes.
Mr. Farella?
Yes.
Dr. Jelinas?
Yes.
Mr. Locatell?
Yes.
Ms. Latazori?
Yes.
Ms. Lounsbury?
Yes.
Sarah Tucker?
Yes.
Mr. Peters?
Yes, motion carries.
Forget Mr. Case. Mr.
Oh, Mr. Case?
Yes.
Are we on? I am so sorry.
It's
Carried without
So
you.
sorry.
just like home.
You are checked off. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. So the second thing that I have is just a report about a new method for us for reporting bullying. So what we've done is we have made it easier, more accessible for families, staff, students to report any incidences or any if they feel like there's the potential that they have been bullying, if they feel like they're being bullied, we always start with an investigation. And the very first thing we do is we fill out an incident report form. What we've done, and I'm going to have my assistant superintendent, Michael Hinault, talk more about that. He's really took the lead and made sure that that form was digital and that we have it online now. So it's digital. It's digital for families. It's digital for staff. So that means that once a bullying incident form has been started, and I will be putting that in my newsletter, my family newsletter, but that means once that form is initiated, we see it. So it's just a more accessible way for us to share that information and to follow it. So I'm going to turn it over to him because he's going to show you that process and what it looks like.
So we partnered with a company called Droplet. We're digitizing many of our PDF forms and both working on streamlining how we fill them out, but also the workflows that go along so that they're sent automatically to the right people without having to send emails or inter-office mail. The bullying form itself is found on the bully. We created a new tab actually on the website, which is bullying and reporting, and it's the first one under family and community. And we created some of our resources around for families around what constitutes bullying, how it's defined, our investigatory procedures, our code of conduct, and our prevention plan, and also some of our SEL resources that we use for restorative practices when incidents take place. It's all linked there, so parents have access to that. And family members, and that first link right there was, sorry, Yeah, just so that the big blue box, report a bullying incident, if you click on that, this is the public facing form, and as you can see, it's coded to use autofill. If you have that set up on your computer, it will, it's pretty quick and intuitive. If you choose the school or schools that the students go to, it will automatically notify the right administrator who's in charge of investigating. It also sends messages to central office and the building principal to know when the investigation started, and it gives the administrator in charge of the investigation a timeline to have it finished by. And along each step of the process, there are checkpoints that follow our investigating form, and also requirements by state law that won't let the investigator move forward until the steps have taken place. And it keeps everybody informed in real time about where the investigation is. And it also creates a permanent record that's time-stamped of when witness statements were taken, when investigations happened, when phone calls were made, when communication back to families has taken place, and all of that lives in a database that is accessible to the building principals and central office. So it's streamlined. The workflow, it took us a little bit of time to get the workflow right, but it's working now, and we're ready. We're using it live now at the with the district level, and it'll go out to parents next week to go live.
It's not visible to anybody but staff, correct? Like parents can't see an incident report.
No, as soon as you hit submit, it goes into it's completely secure. Yep.
Thank you.
One small editing comment.
Yep.
Where it says date of previous incident, maybe we should put date, S's in parentheses after date and incident, because, I mean.
They can only choose, the form will only let you choose one date.
Oh, okay.
That's actually a limitation of the form.
Oh.
So, and what this will do is it actually prompts the investigation, and on the next page, which you can't see because on the admin side, it actually asks them to investigate all previous incidents and document them.
Okay.
So there is a spot on the next page, which is pretty lengthy, that has an area for that to be filled in.
Okay.
So this one date is enough really for here to trigger the next step.
Okay.
I have a question. Given that the definition, the official state definition of bullying is pretty extensive, multiple, same person, that sort of thing, should it say bullying and harassment? Because if they think they're getting a bullying, and then it comes back to them as it didn't meet the criteria of bullying, it was harassment, shouldn't we have both those up there, so at least there's an expectation that possibly it's gonna come back as a harassment and they won't be surprised?
I think the intent is that anytime a family member or a student or a staff member feels like it could be bullying, it should be reported and investigated. And I think that the process of investigating is what leads us down to determining whether it is bullying or harassment or a number of other things. And so most people, I would say, are probably unsure of whether it's bullying or harassment or pure conflict most of the time.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't want them not to report it because they had a question. I don't know.
One thing that I'm gonna do that will hopefully be helpful is in my newsletter, when I send this information out to families, I'm also gonna include a PowerPoint, very brief, that really defines and outlines what bullying is. So I'm gonna make sure it's in my newsletter, it's on the website, it's gonna be right alongside this form, so that we're gonna try to keep everyone as informed as absolutely possible. This is an effort for us to really streamline the process, to make sure, like right now, we have forms, We have things that are passed down from person to person. This does that work for us. So it really makes it more efficient. It makes everybody's time more efficient. But at the end of the day, we're doing this. The idea is that this is a better way for us to keep track and to make sure that all staff, students, and families feel like they're listened to, they're heard, and quickly. And we pride ourselves on the fact that we do this now anyway, but this really makes it even faster. It makes it more efficient for us. We can all see it. We can all be on the same page.
And this is the PowerPoint that is linked, and we did do a training with all administrators earlier this fall. Two of the major areas where people sometimes get confused around a bullying determination is the idea of how do you move from just being mean, because kids can be mean, and they can be mean without it being bullying. And people can have peer conflicts, which are kind of a step up from mean behavior, without it necessarily being bullying. And so this is just a chart that helps kind of distinguish some of the questions that we ask ourselves as we're determining those different behaviors. And then the next piece, part of bullying is a power imbalance typically, and there's a lot of things that can constitute a power imbalance, and these are just some of them that we talked about as a group, just so that families can see that as well. Everything from social status to economic status, and even knowledge, the possession of knowledge can actually create a power imbalance, especially with social media in the hands of students. So these are just some of the things that we use as we're investigating, and just being transparent about that, I think will go a long way at helping the community know how we're making determinations around investigations.
So if a family sees that their student has an incident, and they go through this PowerPoint and say, okay, it doesn't seem like it's going to be bullying, how are they supposed to report that then?
They can report that here at the incident, and our vice principal or deans will make the determination, and they'll call. Once we see this, the first step is to contact the family.
Well, I think that kind of goes back to what Rich was saying about how it could be confusing if it only says bullying, then they might be dissuaded from using this form.
The bullying incident reporting form is required by law,
right,
which is why we have it.
So we kind of have to label it. We're really bound to label it this way, to be honest with you. And these forms, like even the older form that we have, really follow DESE guidelines. So we want to be in line with the state. But I also would say that sometimes if a family isn't sure, staff member, student, they should call the school, they can talk first to the teacher, they can talk to our dean of students, they can talk to our vice principal, our principals. We have trained the entire administrative team. So if you're not sure how to parcel that out, one, you could always fill out the form if you think it falls into that category, and everyone should feel like they're empowered to use this resource. The other thing, they could always communicate their concerns and look for some direction on the part of the school.
Almost all of our reports are made by our own administrative team after talking on the phone or through email with families. Families have not been engaging with our form that's been online, the PDF version. So we're hoping that parents will still engage in the phone call. They'll make the call to the principal. They'll make the call to the school. When that happens, this form gets automatically filled out by the administrator. But we're hoping that people that might not call and might not email have another avenue of reporting that'll be helpful. I would say, I don't know the number, more than 90% of our forms are filled out by administrators, not by families.
And I think that's an important thing to know, that this does, families are not necessarily responsible for filling these out. They can make a phone call, then we will fill them out. So oftentimes families don't necessarily want to fill out these forms. We just want to make sure it's as accessible as possible, and it is 24/7 accessible to families, because sometimes during school hours when you would make a phone call aren't necessarily convenient hours for families and their work hours.
Sure.
Two things. One very quick thing. There's a double do in the PowerPoint, but on the slide prior to that. But on a more significant note, I think that it's,
You said that so well.
I was like, what does a double do?
I completely understand that, we're tied in terms of, how it needs to be labeled and presented in terms of the form itself. I wonder, and I also think that it's important to educate folks about the difference between bullying and these other forms of conflict. But if you're hoping that they'll fill out that form regardless, maybe we could just communicate that as well. Sort of a, when in doubt, call.
When in doubt, fill it out.
Whatever.
Yeah, no, I can absolutely do that in my family communication. So that was my intention as part of my family communication. That will go out next Friday. We wanted to send it to all of you, and usually we have different layers, I guess, of communication. So it usually comes from me first, and then the principals send it out through their family communication, and then sometimes it'll fall in, teachers will communicate in some of their newsletters as well. So we try to make sure we're being we're in alignment on how we see, that this is a resource that's available for families, and that they do hear it more than once, because everybody's busy today, so.
And we're hoping and expecting an uptick with the initial rollout. And so we're actually hoping to get forms to test the system.
Yeah, Ellen?
To what Charlotte was saying, like, even if you, this is when you blast families, this is, I know the form only says bullying, but it's prescriptive by the state, or this is how the state wants us to appear, but please fill this out if you even think your child has come into it as having an issue.
Don't
Yeah.
fill it out.
Just, the form is what it is, but you don't want people getting confused or thinking that other.
No, I agree, and that's really what that's the kind of support that we are supposed to provide, that we want to provide. We want to be able to provide that support, because when I was a parent, I can honestly say I would not have known the difference between conflict to students just being mean versus what is harassment, what is bullying. I would just know that there was a problem,
Exactly.
honestly. So that's a good point, and I will stress that in my newsletter.
Let's face it, over the decades, the term bullying has gotten, this is much more prescriptive and precise
It has.
than when we were in school, which was basically anything you were being bullied.
Absolutely.
Anybody else? Okay.
So I don't have anything else.
All right, moving on. The only thing I have is just a reminder of, it's listed in your agenda. Quite a few folks, including myself, are up for election this year. And I hope that everybody on there goes back, because I love the group that we have. So hope you're interested in running again. So next up is the reports from the committees. Curriculum.
We have not met since our last school committee meeting. Our next meeting is going to be Wednesday, March 13th at 7 p.m. on Zoom, where we're going to be going over winter benchmarks. We're going to get an update from the Curriculum Council, and we will be reviewing the new school calendar for the 2024-2025 school year. I think I just said that.
Time flies. All right, thanks. Finance.
All right, so we've met twice since our last school committee meeting, so I have a lot to report.
Yes, you do.
So on January 30th, we met and Greg presented an overview of the proposed budget. The presentation showed an updated year-over-year budget increase of 3.06%. The previous increase was noted at 3.29, so it had come down now that more accurate health insurance costs have been updated. And due to an unanticipated increase in Chapter 70 funding. Town assessments are currently projected at 3.35%. In aggregate, there's a wide range this year from 1% to 6% based on changing conditions of our member towns. We also talked about the EV charging stations. We're still in process of getting the leases reviewed by CBRSD's legal counsel to see what options we have available to us. The stations are reported to be user-friendly and charge 30 cents per kilowatt. We're not looking to use these as a revenue source, but to simply break even. At this meeting, we also learned that the investment advisor for the OPEB trust had been acquired, and we need to now find a new one. This prompted the Finance Committee to meet again on February 5th, where we met on Zoom with Catherine Canny from PARS to discuss changes to OPEB, and I'll get into that in a minute. We also discussed changes to the fiscal year 2025 tentative budget. The biggest change request was for more transparency about how the district's gross figures came to be and how the 3.06% increase was derived. Director of Finance and Operations, Gregory Wahconah, walked us through the changes in additional slides that detailed what budget increases were contractual and how different funding sources were used to offset further increases. We also reviewed town student population data, which is used to determine town assessments, and it was noted that the poverty rates have increased in our district by 12%. The Finance Committee also recommended that the numbers provided in the presentation for a full committee vote. So regarding OPEB, first a quick refresher. The OPEB is used to offset healthcare costs for retirees. It's currently about 4% funded at around $2.5 million as of December 31st. We were informed by Catherine Canny, our PARS representative, that the current investment advisor, which was VIAS, or Vanguard Investment Advisory Services, has been acquired, and they're dropping all government clients, which our trust is considered to be. So for all of our knowledge here, there's three pieces at play in these types of accounts. The first is the record keeper and the administrator, and that's who PARS is, and Catherine, that's the role that they take. They're responsible for keeping the trust documents in good order and in compliance, and handle any contributions or distributions from the trust. The second player in this is the custodian, and that is U.S. Bank. They're the entity that actually holds onto the funds in the investments. This is currently done by U.S. Bank. And the third is the investment advisor, who creates the investment lineup and manages the models that we're invested in. So with this change, we need to find a new investment advisor for the account, but we were presented with a few options. The first option was to switch to an advisor called PFM Asset Management, or PFMAM, who was recommended by PARS and Catherine. This organization is a subsidiary or owned by U.S. Bank, the custodian, so it's a pretty seamless switch. We just need to sign a few documents, and from our end, we wouldn't really notice that much different. We reviewed the investment models and options at PFMAM, and they're very similar to what was available to us at Vanguard, though they are slightly different approaches. From a fee perspective, moving to the PFMAM would actually decrease our fee by 0.01%. So the current fees, just for everyone's awareness, is 0.3814%, and with the proposed change, it would move to 0.3761%. The other options that we have available to us are to find a new advisor or to self-manage the account. These are both very involved processes that would involve RFPs that would need to be created, along with potentially new trust documents, and most likely new policies from investment policies and new relationships. We also have the option to do nothing. We have until March 1st to make a decision. If no decision is made, on April 1st, the assets of the trust will be liquidated and moved into a money market fund. It would still be in the name of the trust, but it would no longer be invested in anything other than a money market fund. This option would buy us time, but there's also an opportunity cost because of potential gain that we lost out on, because we don't know how long that process would take. After some good discussion, the Finance Subcommittee motioned to recommend the superintendent to transfer responsibility to the investment advisor at PFMAM. Our next meeting is scheduled for February 29th at 6:30 here.
All right, any questions or comments about? Well, I think you have some motions.
I've got a bunch of motions to read too. So, what's that?
Yeah, do you have a motion?
For Part B, do we need to do a motion?
Yeah, we should. Yeah, that's what we talked about.
Okay. So a motion to authorize the superintendent to sign the amended adoption agreement to the district's OPEB trust.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any questions, discussion? It sounded like it was pretty much the only option there at this point, other than a lot of other financial work that we're not really qualified to do. That was a pretty good idea.
Yeah, and as a point, I did send a bunch of questions to PFMAM to learn more about their strategy and how they approach things. And it is fairly similar. It's a little bit more of an active approach, but I think at the end of the day, it's not too different.
Ellen?
Just one quick question. There is, and just because PFPM is owned or a subsidiary of US Bank, there's no conflict of interest within that as a consideration? Just checking.
Anything else? Nothing else? A roll call vote, please.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Dr. Kraft Reese?
Yes.
Charlotte Crane?
Yes.
Bonnie DiTomaso?
Yes.
Dr. Eberwein?
Yes.
Mr. Emerson?
Yes.
Mr. Farella?
Yes.
Dr. Jelinas?
Yes.
Mr. Lakato?
Yes.
Ms. Latazuri?
Yes.
Ms. Lounsbury?
Yes.
Sarah Tucker?
Yes.
Mr. Peters?
Yes. Motion carries.
So Part C, tentative fiscal year 2025 budget allocation. Tentative gross salaries and benefits adoption.
So we can do the presentation first.
Oh, you do the presentation?
Yeah.
Give you a chance to get your voice back.
Yeah, take a break. Did very good.
Yes. Nice work. Good job.
So this evening, Greg Bueno and I will be presenting the tentative budget to you. Last week, and previously, we referred to it as the initial budget. So one of the things that I just wanted to let you know that you can expect that will look a little bit different. We've been working closely with our finance subcommittee, and one of the requests, and a good one from our perspective, was to really look at what the actual percentage is of our operating budget that it takes to actually run the district. And as you know, we have grants that we offset to run our district, but we're going to start out with showing you that gross, and then very specifically with that request to be as transparent as possible, we will show you how we actually offset that to bring it to the 3.06 that our finance chair was telling you about. So it's going to start out, it's going to look a little bit different, but you'll see how we get to that 3.06%. In terms of our goals have remained the same. Again, we feel it is important to balance being fiscally responsible to our community, taking into consideration resources, time, human resources, resources that provide educational opportunities for our students, and while at the same time, this is our balance, this is our challenge, ensuring that all students have high quality opportunities that are equitable. And that sounds, I'm sure you've heard me say this before, but it is a lofty goal, and it's one that we take very seriously.
So this screen will look similar to what we've shown before, but the numbers are different. So the middle number is the preview of the tentative budget, which is now the gross, which is all funds. This is taking account grants, revolving accounts, and the operating funds. So to run the district, it takes just over $35 million. Compared to what you'll see later is what needs to be appropriated to run the district, which is closer to $31 million. So this shows a year-over-year increase of 5.45%, or $1.8 million. This shows the increases and decreases for the FY25 tentative budget. So for increases, year over year, we have salary increases around $680,000. That includes contractual increases, also the addition of one FTE teacher at Greenville Elementary. This includes transportation increases, which are contractual, insurance premium increases For active health insurance, it's just over 400,000. For retiree health insurance, it's right around 135,000. As for premium increases, we did, since we've met last as a full school committee, we do have actual premium increases for health insurance for active premiums. There is a 7% increase year over year. We were anticipating an 8% that we had in the tentative budget, so it went down a little bit. We were hoping it would go down a little farther, but that's what the board voted on, was a 7% increase. Berkshire County Retirement, that is set by Berkshire County Retirement, their assessment. It's about right around 8%, it's 63,000. The band interest and premium, that's $121,000 increase year over year. Hopefully this will be our last year with that in our operating budget. We will hopefully go out to bond for the remaining up to 20% for the Wahconah project, and it would become part of the capital budget. The last piece of increases would be the special education tuition. If you remember back to the tentative or initial budget, it was closer to $350,000. This includes some of the offsets we're using out of other funds, so it's an increase year over year of $765,000.
In terms of decreases, some of these we had in the presentation last time. We discussed the 5 Title I tutors that were ESSER funded, the 1.0 STEM teacher that was shared between Nessicus and the middle school, or the Nessicus and the high school. And the last one that I didn't have on the last budget is 2 registered behavior technicians that are currently at the 2 smaller schools. What we are doing, though, is we're reallocating some of our school adjustment counselor resources to those small schools. So actually, they will have more licensed support instead of an RBT. They will have more licensed support from a school adjustment counselor at both Beckett, Washington, and Kittredge. So that is, they're actually not necessarily losing services, but they are losing those 2 positions. As I mentioned, there's a balance. There's always a balance. The one full-time elementary position that we did add to the budget this time was a full-time elementary position, and that was to ensure that Craneville has 4 kindergarten classrooms instead of 3. We've held 4 for a while, but it's always a question mark as we go into the summer, and we get census data, we think about it, we wait. We always need 4, and right now we already have at least, I would say, probably 12 to 13 school choice requests for kindergarten at Craneville. We know we're going to need 4, so we just added that position into the operational budget.
The last decrease would be the charter school tuition. That's the assessment from the state. It's a large decrease of $155,000. We'll also see our, on a later slide, our revenue is also decreased, not by as much. So if we look at all the increases and decreases, it's the year-over-year increase of $1.8 million, and you'll see that number matches the number close to on the first page. So as we look closer, how are we offsetting these increases? A large piece is paying salaries out of other funds, if that's revolving or grant funds. So if you look at the green section on the left-hand side, those are our grants. The blue section is the revolving accounts. Some of these you are aware of, Title I funds. We receive those every year, additional special needs. We have 1 more year of the Student Opportunity Act grant for FY25. ESSER 3, we've been talking about that multiple times. It is ending, but it's ending in September of 2024, so upcoming September. So some of our salaries that work over the summer, we've allocated just to offset that $1.2 million we had in FY24. We're taking a step down to $280,000. It will be gone when we look at FY26 budget. The Coordinated Family Community Engagement, that is Wendy Preventure's program. We do receive that every year. Early Child Education and Care, that's another special ed grant. Rural Aid, if you remember, the Finance Subcommittee recommended to use some of our rural aid to help offset salaries as we move into next year. So about $450,000 for salaries. For some of our revolving accounts, we have Circuit Breaker, which is a revenue we receive each year for special ed costs. School lunch, our school lunch program is completely funded by the school lunch fund. And then preschool revolving, that is, we've had a couple of years where we haven't had to use the preschool revolving account to pay salaries. We did that very purposeful, so we knew we would be moving into a year where we'd have to start using it. So we've been letting that build up. So just about 11% of our salaries are paid out of grants and 5% are paid out of revolving. If we look at the next screen, you'll see that those green and blue bars are there as well. This is all the offsets we're using to help us get to a number that's a little better for the appropriation funds. So we're using FY24 rural aid grants to help prepaid special ed tuition in about $380,000. We're also prepaying about $400,000 in expenses, so we don't have to budget for those next year. We are using the FY25 circuit breaker. We receive this each year. About $258,000 of it next year will be used for special ed tuition as well. And then those salary offsets are the grant funds and revolving funds. So when we add all these numbers together, it's just over $4 million. And you'll see that $35 million on the right-hand side is from that first slide, the year-over-year increase. And that $31 million now carries us through to our 3.06 increase year-over-year, which is going to be used for, we need to appropriate either through town assessments or state revenue. So year-over-year, it's just under $1 million at $926,000.
Any questions? Discussion?
Okay, so when we look at this screen, so this is our preliminary revenue projections. The big thing to know on this is we did receive more Chapter 70 than we were anticipating. We were thinking we were going to get about 0.5%. We got 3.5 and about just over $300,000. Another piece that did change from the initial budget is the charter school reimbursement. Our revenue is decreasing about $15,000. If you remember, our assessment also was reduced. The bottom half of this screen, there's not much changes since the initial budget transformation revolving. That was voted on by school committee in July at $600,000. And interest income, Medicaid reimbursement, miscellaneous income, those have all kind of remained steady. E&D appropriation, that was shown, I think, to the school committee back in December. It's a little increase year over year. And then you'll see the town assessments, they're up 3.35% at about $580,000.
So this slide right here really gives you the 5-year rolling average, and that determines the operational apportionment that you see. So just a couple things that I wanted to point out in terms of population, and that is that Peru has gone from, no, that's not what I wanted.
86 to 92.
86, yeah, I'm sorry. So that Peru has gone, I was looking at the bottom number, Peru has gone from 86 to 92. Hinsdale has grown from 164 to 183. If you look at our choice numbers are actually second behind Dalton in terms of the number of students that we service. And in general, we're growing at a slow pace, but we are growing. So those are basically the numbers that we use for our operational budget.
And the other thing I would note on this page is even if you look at the last two lines, October 2022 and October 2023, there were some large changes year over year, just 1 year. So if you look at Beckett, they went from 131 students last year to 120 this year. And at Hinsdale, like Leslie said, over 5 years it decreased, but also in 1 year, last year there was 169 students on October 1, this year there's 183. So it just kind of shows in the small towns how quickly it can change their demographics and their enrollment. So this slide shows it's just kind of a visual of that last slide we just saw. The top, it's very light, but that green line shows the total district enrollment. This year we were at 1589. That's all the way on the right-hand side. You'll see that's our highest enrollment since 2018, which is nice to see. There was all the talks about declining enrollment. We're not increasing great at a steady rate, but at least we're not declining. The very bottom is our school choice. You can kind of see that that's remained steady over the last 5 or 6 years.
And this slide really shows, it's another way of looking at our enrollment figures as of October 1, 2023. It just shows you basically the percentage that each school holds of our total. This slide hasn't changed. It has not changed since our last presentation. There's been one change, and that would be the elementary teacher that we added to maintain the 4 kindergartens at Craneville Elementary School. This slide right here really shows, we like to compare the percentage of district students by school with the percentage of district full-time employees on the right. I think you'll see at the high school, there's usually a wider gap, and part of that is because there are more specialized courses at the high school. But for the most part, I think you can see that we're between 2 and 4 percentage points, which is where we like to be.
So this is our, and the tentative is the first time the town assessments are shown. And that's really from the fact that the required local contribution isn't provided from DESI until partway through January. So that when we saw Chapter 70 funds, what we were receiving this year, required local contribution also came out at that time. That is something that is provided by DESI. We do not calculate the required local contribution as a district. It's by the state. So you'll see that, as we said on an earlier slide, it was a 3.35% increase year over year, and it does range depending on that required local contribution and the town's percentage, which is all the way on the left. That is how the budget balance and the transportation assessment is calculated. So there are some changes. There are many factors that could change how a town would see an increase or a decrease.
I was gonna say, the other only thing I was gonna add is you can kind of see those numbers really do correlate to some degree with the requirement on the part of the towns. You can see where the shifts with some of our smaller towns match to their required contribution this year, or their percentages.
The last piece of the puzzle for the budget is the capital budget. This has not changed since the initial budget. The only thing that this is a different way to see it. So you'll see there's three columns in the middle. Those are the three projects we currently have. One is the Beckett Washington renovation, one is the Wahconah renovation, and one is the Wahconah building project. The Beckett Washington renovation will come off the books in FY25. So this will be our last budget we will see that Beckett renovation. The Wahconah renovation, that was done prior to the building project. That will come off the books in FY29, and the Wahconah building project will come off in FY47. Year over year, we are seeing a decrease of about 360,000, or 36,000. 3,600. Any questions? Or would you like me to go back to any slides?
A quick question on the students and teachers, the two pie charts. I noticed Craneville has the largest difference of about 5% or so. Will that addition of the elementary school teacher change that, or is that?
It's already factored in.
Yeah.
And does that materially matter, really, or not so much?
It can matter, I think. It's something that we have to look at. I mean, it's something that we're keeping an eye on. I will say that when you mentioned that, and I say this cautiously because I don't have absolute numbers, but I will say that as we see our poverty rate rise and go up, and right now we're sitting at somewhere between 12 and 13% in a rise, that affects our Title I funding. It does not affect our Title I funding for this fiscal budget year. It will affect our Title I funding, I anticipate, for the next fiscal budget year. So that's where I would look at this and say, where do we need, where's the need? And this helps us determine that.
And the other thing I'll add about these pie charts, one thing that you have to kind of think about too is some of it's scheduling. So for instance, we have an art teacher at Craneville. She's only there 3 days a week, so it's only 0.6 of an art teacher at Craneville. There's that piece to it as well. I'm not saying that it shouldn't be closer, but factors.
Thanks.
So you're losing 5 NTs and Title I tutors in the coming school year.
So the Title I tutors aren't considered, we don't put those in, we don't consider them FTEs.
Okay.
They're contracted separately,
Okay.
so they're not included in that.
Okay.
So they are not included in those numbers.
Okay. But there are no, we only have 5 Title I tutors in the district, or?
No, we have a total of 11. I believe we have a total of 11. So the 5 were added when we received ESSER funds.
Okay.
Anybody else? No, you don't.
The only other thing I'll add before we go to the votes is, so this is the tentative budget, so it only needs a simple majority for a vote, but as next month when we meet for the final budget, it will need a 2/3. So at that point, we'll need at least 10 out of the 15 members voting on the budget. At this one, it's just a simple majority.
All right, so for the tentative fiscal year 2025 gross salaries and benefit adoption, be it resolved that the Central Berkshire Regional School Committee adopts a tentative gross salary contractual salary increases for all employees and active employees' insurance benefits budget for the school year 2024 to 2025 in the amount of $20,292,285 as proposed in the tentative fiscal year 2025 maintenance and operating budget document and is recommended by the Finance Subcommittee.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other questions? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Dr. Kraft Reese?
Yes.
Charlotte Crane?
Yes.
Bonnie D. Tomaso?
Yes.
Dr. Eberwein?
Yes.
Mr. Emerson?
Yes.
Mr. Farella?
Yes.
Dr. Jelinas?
Yes.
Mr. Locatell?
Yes.
Ms. Latazori?
Yes.
Ms. Lounsbury?
Yes.
Sarah Tucker?
Yes.
Mr. Peters?
Yes. Motion carries.
All right, so fiscal year 2025 retirees benefits adoption. Be it resolved that the Central Berkshire Regional School Committee adopts a tentative retirees health insurance benefits budget for the school year 2024 to 2025 in the amount of $2,242,786 as proposed in the tentative fiscal year 2025 maintenance and operating budget document and is recommended by the Finance Subcommittee.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any questions on this one? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Dr. Kraft Reese?
Yes.
Charlotte Crane?
Yes.
Bonnie D. Tomaso?
Yes.
Dr. Eberwein? Dr. Eberwein?
Yeah, I'm gonna abstain, thank you.
Mr. Emerson?
Yes.
Mr. Farella?
Yes.
Dr. Jelinas?
Abstain.
Mr. Locatell?
Yes.
Ms. Latazori?
Yes.
Ms. Lounsbury?
Yes.
Sarah Tucker?
Yes.
Mr. Peters?
Yes. Motion carries.
Fiscal number 3, fiscal year 2025 operating budget adoption. Whereas by its regional agreement, the Central Berkshire Regional School Committee must prepare a tentative budget 75 days prior to the first annual town meeting. Therefore, be it resolved that the Central Berkshire Regional School Committee adopts a tentative gross operating budget for the school year 2024 to 2025 in the amount of $31,227,719 as proposed in the tentative fiscal year 2025 maintenance and operating budget document as recommended by the Finance Subcommittee.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any questions on this one? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Dr. Kraft Reese?
Yes.
Charlotte Crane?
Yes.
Bonnie D. Tomaso?
Yes.
Dr. Eberwein?
Yes.
Mr. Emerson?
Yes.
Mr. Farella?
Yes.
Dr. Jelinas?
Yes.
Mr. Locatell?
Yes.
Ms. Latazori?
Yes.
Ms. Lounsbury?
Yes.
Sarah Tucker?
Yes.
Mr. Peters?
Yes. Motion carries.
All right. Tentative fiscal year 2025 capital budget adoption. Be it resolved that the Central Berkshire Regional School Committee adopts a tentative capital budget for the school year 2024 to 2025 in the amount of $2,094,850 as proposed in the tentative fiscal year 2025 maintenance and operating budget document as recommended by the Finance Subcommittee.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any questions on this one? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Dr. Kraft Reese?
Yes.
Charlotte Crane?
Yes.
Bonnie D. Tomaso?
Yes.
Dr. Eberwein?
Yes.
Mr. Emerson?
Yes.
Mr. Farella?
Yes.
Dr. Jelinas?
Yes.
Mr. Locatell?
Yes.
Ms. Latazori?
Yes.
Ms. Lounsbury?
Yes.
Sarah Tucker?
Yes.
Mr. Peters?
Yes, motion carries. And you are done. Thank you. Good. That's a lot of work. It's this time of year, buddy. Thank you for your efforts, by the way. Thank you. Okay, next up is policy.
Yes, we met last night, February 7th, at Nessus Middle School, and we briefly discussed updating the internet safety policy with MASC's new draft, and then we continued discussion of Section B, the portion on local governance with Liz LaFond. For the main themes that we were looking at were simplifying wording, removing any direct law quotations and just replacing those with references. We continued discussing how to merge and streamline policy and the bylaws. And then we discussed how subcommittees are formed, duties assigned, members assigned by the chair and full school committee. We will continue with section B and hopefully begin our review of subsequent sections at our next meeting, which is March 6th at 6:30 at Nessus Middle School.
Any questions for Sean? None? Okay. Next up is personnel.
I have no report.
Okay. Safety and wellness.
I also have no report, but we are looking to meet possibly on the 28th of February.
Okay. Nothing on the Wahconah building project. It's just in the audit phase. And then the regional ad hoc agreement, there's been quite a bit of activity around that in the last week or two. Mainly trying to get out to the town meetings or the select boards and find out what their status is. And we have, good movement in most places. So we've gotten feedback from every town now, and we've incorporated that feedback into the agreement. The feedback that is acceptable according to Mars and DESI. Mars tells us whether DESI will incorporate that or not, will accept it or not, and some of those things. So anyways, what we're going to send out tomorrow is to all of you is the first draft of the changes, the draft that's been updated with all of the feedback from all the towns, and included in that, it'll be redlined, so it'll show what we've added from the feedback from all the towns in there, and then the third one will be a non-red line version, the version that we will vote on next week. So essentially, what we have for you guys is an assignment for next week. You need to look at this regional agreement. It's going to be coming to you tomorrow, and we need to get, if you have more changes that you see that we need to make, if you're looking at that, if you have some issues with it or changes with it, we need to get it back. It'd be great if we get it back by Monday afternoon so we can have Mars take a look at that and adjust it before we go to the meeting next Thursday for a vote next Thursday for this committee to move it forward to the annual town meetings. So this committee has to vote on it to say, yes, we want this, we agree with this, we want to move it on and put it on the annual town meetings for all 7 towns to adopt the budget, to adopt the regional agreement as changed. So it really is on us now to take a look at that and see if there's anything else there. There is some more feedback coming from towns, they're still working on some of the feedback, but quite frankly, at this point, we have a time crunch because we got to get it to the annual town meetings. We have to get it to DESI. After we vote it, it goes to DESI, and then it comes back to, the annual town meeting. So there's a process here that we've got to make sure we've got it in time. So next week, we want to vote on the regional agreement as amended by all the feedback from the towns. So it's really up to us guys to look at it, make sure if you see anything that you don't agree with, to get back to us, early next week, Monday, so we can get it changed and then out there for the Thursday meeting. We are meeting again next week, by the way, because of school vacation week. We're meeting 2 weeks in a row. So are there any questions on that?
Rich, can you just clarify who those comments should go to? Should they go to Beth? Should they go to you?
They should go to Beth, send them to Beth, and she'll forward them on to Jay and Mars, and have them incorporated if there are any. So, and then if there are any, we can discuss it at that meeting and either add or amend it, vote on it as amended at that time. I mean, this is really, Todd, thanks, a lot of work with a lot of people, to move this along, and it's been a big job, and it's almost to the finish line. We got to move it across. I've been really talking to the select boards and the towns, and I've been stressing, for the most part, this is really just bringing us up to date to the laws of the way they are now versus 1958 when it was created, and also to what we're doing now, because our current agreement does not reflect exactly how we operate, and it hasn't for many years. So it's really just bringing it up to date, and I keep saying this should not be controversial for the most part, And hopefully that's the way the towns receive it, so. Any questions?
Just a comment, thank you for going to Beckett last night, I appreciate it.
Yes. Well, I have to admit, I went by Zoom. So I didn't drive up. But you're welcome, thank you, for sure. Okay, next up is the superintendent ad hoc.
Well, we haven't met, but we will be meeting on February 26th at 7 PM via Zoom. And it'll be our first quarterly meeting with our superintendent, so we're looking forward to that.
Cool. All right, so I think that gets us to the end. Any old business? Any new business? I have a remark for the good committee. Congratulations to Mr. Perella, being a full, we have a sled in our head, 4-year employee. A lot of pressure now.
Yeah.
But I can see why it was
Got a
very
lot to live
report.
up to.
Yeah, yes, did a nice job. Any other remarks for the good of the committee? All right, motion to adjourn?
Second.
Motion and second, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Case?
Sure.
Dr. Crabtree?
Yes.
Charlotte Crane?
Yes.
Bonnie DiTomaso?
Yes.
Dr. Eberwein?
Yes.
Mr. Emerson?
Yes.
Mr. Farella?
Yes.
Dr. Jelinas?
Yes.
Mr. Wahconah?
Yes.
Ms. Latazuri?
Yes.
Ms. Lounsbury?
Yes.
Sarah Tucker?
Yes.
Mr. Peters?
Yes. Motion adjourned.